Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really profound philosophical and theological lecture by Mustafa İslamoğlu. He explores the incredibly deep, intricate nature of words, human consciousness, and what are known as the divine names. We're going to look at how a simple spoken word goes way, way beyond just being a sound vibrating in the air, how it actually has the potential to alter our physical reality. Plus, we'll see how centuries-old theology uses these very concepts of language to bridge that seemingly impossible gap between a highly limited human mind and an infinite creator. To start us off, I want to pose a question directly to you. It's actually the exact hook the source material uses to elegantly frame this whole philosophical journey. According to the foundational narratives of the major monotheistic faiths, what makes human beings superior to angels? Take a second to really think about it. Now, if you're thinking it's physical strength or maybe some kind of pure, unyielding spiritual devotion, well, the lecture argues otherwise. The answer is actually our unique capacity to conceptualize reality through names and words. It's language, not biology or blind obedience, that literally elevates us. The source explains this whole phenomenon through a concept called ta'lim al-isma, which essentially translates to the divine teaching of names. According to the text, the Creator taught Adam the names of all things, and it was this exact, profound capacity for language that caused the angels to bow. Without words, the lecture argues, humanity would basically just be trapped in a strictly biological, animalistic existence. Words are the absolute crucial tools that allow us to think, to build massive civilizations, to develop complex technology, and ultimately to transcend our physical limits as biological creatures. And this brilliantly illustrates the hidden power of language, specifically by looking at the linguistic structure of Arabic. The source points out a really fascinating linguistic phenomenon with anagrams, where reversing the phonetic root of a word completely reverses its actual meaning in reality. It's wild. Take the word sabaha, which means moving, releasing, or acting on behalf of the divine. Now, if you completely reverse the sounds of that exact word, you get habese, which means trapping, holding back, or imprisoning. The literal physical structure of the word perfectly mirrors the physical reality it describes. This deep connection between words and reality is also profoundly emotional. You know, the Arabic root for the word kalam, or speech, actually comes from an ancient root meaning to wound or to leave a mark. The lecture explains that words leave a permanent mark on the human heart, pretty much like a tattoo that you literally cannot erase or simply scrub away. Words are not just these fleeting sounds that vanish into the air the second you say them, they are the shaping forces of our lives. In fact, the source argues that the great trials of historical figures like Abraham weren't just physical events, they were profound words leaving permanent marks on the very fabric of human history. To really show how this works in daily human experience, the lecture shares a deeply emotional historical anecdote. Hazrat Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, came to him with hands that were blistered and bleeding from the agonizing work of grinding wheat. She asked for a physical helper, a servant from recent war captives, just to ease her brutal physical labor. But instead of a physical helper, she was given words. She was told that saying these specific words of praise and remembrance before sleep, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, and Allahu Akbar, 33 times each, would be fundamentally better for her than any servant. Now, you might be wondering right now, just as the lecture anticipates, okay, but do words feed the stomach? Do words do the laundry? It's a completely natural skepticism. But the central thesis here is that words don't feed the stomach, they feed the soul. When the human soul is completely fulfilled, anchored, and fortified by the immense power of these specific words, the physical burdens of the body are completely transcended. The internal strength generated by these words actually overrides the external physical exhaustion. But the source goes a step further, pivoting from the purely spiritual directly into our physical reality. Think about your own body right now. 2/3 of the human body is made of water. Keep that specific, tangible, physical fact in your head because the lecture uses it to set up a truly striking scientific and spiritual observation about exactly how words interact with our physical matter. The lecture references a well-known experiment by a Japanese scientist involving water molecules. According to the experiment outlined in the source, when positive, beautiful words, like the name of God, are spoken to water, the molecules actually align into beautiful, perfectly harmonious crystals. Conversely, when negative, hostile words are spoken, the molecular structure physically breaks down into chaos. The source uses this to make a powerful point. Words literally restructure the physical world around us. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the lecture connects this water experiment back to human spirituality through the practice of zikr, or divine remembrance. Think about it. If words change the structure of water, and you are 2/3 water, then repeating the divine names literally and spiritually changes your physical body. The lecture asserts that this practice reorganizes your internal physical and emotional chaos into a harmonious cosmos. It cleanses the spirit, and crucially, it acts as a tether, connecting the limited human mind to the limitless creator. But this brings us to a massive macro-theological dilemma, one that humanity, as a whole, has struggled with for centuries. If the creator is truly infinite, how can our very limited, finite human minds possibly grasp him? If we make God too abstract, he becomes completely distant and totally irrelevant to our daily lives. On the flip side, if we make him too relatable, we risk reducing the divine to a mere human level. So, how does language actually solve this impossible puzzle? The lecture frames this historical struggle by looking at two major theological extremes. The first is tanzih, meaning absolute transcendence. The source argues that historically, early Judaism leaned so heavily into this absolute transcendence that the divine name became completely unspeakable, resulting in a God perceived as totally detached from daily life. As a historical reaction to that extreme detachment, the lecture claims early Christianity leans heavily into the opposite, tishbih, or anthropomorphism, making God human in the form of Jesus. Both of these historical shifts, according to the source, represent imbalances. One makes God unreachable, the other makes him too ordinary. So how is this balanced? The explainer points to the Quranic framework, which is anchored by the foundational phrase, "Leise kemislihi shayu," meaning nothing is like him. This phrase establishes a perfect middle ground. The creator is not human, nor does he possess human attributes like a physical body or human limitations. Yet he is not entirely unreachable or utterly detached from our reality either. There has to be a bridge. That bridge is called a vasil, the essential means or connection required to reach the creator. And the lecture offers a very strict, passionate warning here against false means. It heavily criticizes relying on human intermediaries, like certain sheiks or spiritual leaders who claim they can personally carry their followers into heaven. According to the source, no human can carry your spiritual burden for you. You have to use the true designated bridge. Let's move to and see how this builds a beautiful two-directional theological ladder. The true vasil has two crucial parts. Step 1 comes from above. The Esma, or the divine names, descend from the creator into human consciousness, giving us the actual words and concepts to comprehend him. Step 2 comes from below. Sali Amel, or righteous deeds, ascend from the human being back up to God. You grab onto the descending names, and you climb upward through your righteous actions. It's a two-way street. To explain how we interact with these descending names without being totally overwhelmed, the lecture brings in a brilliant concept from the revered scholar Al-Ghazali. He described the divine names as a perde, a veil. But actually, scratch that. This isn't a veil that simply hides what's behind it in darkness. It is a reflecting veil. The source uses the vivid analogy of the burning bush for Moses. The bush wasn't God, but it was the physical medium, the veil, that allowed a limited human to perceive the presence of the infinite divine without being destroyed by it. The names of God are basically that burning bush for our minds. So the crucial point is this. We are fundamentally linguistic beings, defined by the words we speak, composed mostly of water, constantly reaching out to an infinite creator through the bridge of divine names. If simple human words have the power to leave permanent marks on history, and if speech can restructure the physical chaos of water molecules into beautiful harmony, how do the limitless creator's names transform the water within you? It's a profound thought to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the source material. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.